Howdy everyone, it's me once again, the one and only Killer Dan. And today, I'm going to be talking about some kaiju stuff. Okay, that seems a little too vague. Let me just get more specific here, I guess. It's going to be in response to this one individual, and he talks about, religion and whatnot. Yeah, I see where this is going. This can't be a good mix whatsoever. And he wants to say a thing or two about the King Kong versus Godzilla. Again, not a good mixture. And as far as I'm concerned, I do believe that this is actually one of the worst films of all time. Holy shit, it's bad. And he says it's bad too, of course. But that's where we would divide it. By which I mean the reasoning behind it being terrible is what I'm getting at here, folks. And yeah, you're talking about the whole thing with Japan being hostile and whatnot, and of course how they would react towards America during a certain period of time, and something with the Chinese army personnel or something. It kind of goes all over the place, but oh boy. Anyway, like it's okay. That's basically gonna be about it, folks. I want to thank anybody ahead of time for watching this because this is not gonna be a short video. Anyway, blah 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 blah, yada yada yada. Let's just dive right into it, shall we? This is gonna be painfully stupid.
The Bible tells us that Christians are to pray for peace. We are to strive for peace. We are also the followers of the Prince of Peace. But we're also told that the Bible brings strong condemnation against those who cry peace, peace, when there is no peace. The Bible tells us that peace is not a natural state in this fallen world, that east of Eden, peace is a very rare and temporary accomplishment. And furthermore, even what we call peace is not actually peace. We're simply talking about something like a ceasefire, or we're talking about the withdrawal or reduction of hostility. The peace that we long for is a peace that only God can accomplish, a peace that will be found only within His kingdom, a peace that would have existed in Eden, but a peace that we destroyed and denied.
Oh, don't give me that. I'm gonna share the blame over here. Oh, it's everybody's fault that we're not having peace. Boy, don't blame me something for something I didn't do. A lot of you Christians are hypocrites anyway. You claim to be open-minded, all-loving, and all that, when people like Kevin Swanson over here actually wants to murder the gays. You can look at that on YouTube if you want. So how do you explain that away?
This comes constantly to mind when we consider such things as the fact that the New York Times is reporting that Japan, the nation that renounced war in the aftermath of the Second World War, that Japan is beginning to reconsider just how unwarlike it can be. As Martin Fackler reports, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe may be about to take one of his biggest steps yet to nudge Japan away from its post-war pacifism.
So, what are you talking about? Anyway, I do think it's kind of odd that you go specifically after Japan. I think it has something to do with the fact that Japan barely has any Christians at all, whereas in America is mostly known for its Christians, despite not being a Christian nation. And it's not. I don't care what anyone else tells me. It's not a Christian nation. Even though there's lots of Christians in America. There is. However, the thing is that there's very little, although I'll get non-believers in America. Very little of that. However, in Japan, it's the other way around, when you think about it.
After a government advisory panel recommended last week that constitutional restrictions on the military be eased to allow Japanese forces to come to the aid of allied nations under attack.
No, 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 and an infinite expanse of no's from the dimension of no, with a statue dedicated to their great creator, the god of no, who wept tears of no that filled the oceans with no and brought about billions of creatures who were no.
What you're referring to has nothing to do with Christianity whatsoever. They're not trying to make up some sort of peace treaty, whatever, with Christianity. That was not the case here. Yes, after World War II, Japan severely limited the military power, yes, but for a different reason, not for what you were saying. It had something to do with, communism, they're being invaded and whatnot, because, well, Syria, but anyway, there was a country that was threatening them because of communism. Excuse me if I pronounced that wrong, I butchered the name, but point being is that this individual does not know his history, whatsoever.
Japan bore the humiliation of the atrocities of World War II and of causing World War II in the Pacific, launching a surprise attack upon the United States and its allies.
Again, technically you're wrong. A lot of people believe that it started Germany, really. And even before World War II, Japan and America had some tension anyway, prior to this. Oh, boy. Do I have to correct you on everything? I mean, really? Come on now.
On December the 7th of 1941. Japan was totally humiliated at the end of the Second World War, and it recognized that at least a part of the cause of its military involvement was the fact that there was a fusion of militarism and nationalism and a form of national religion that came together in a very toxic mix. In response to that, Japan's constitution, its post-war constitution, one of the marvels of the modern world.
Again, yeah, Japan and America couldn't get along for a little while. True, but that doesn't mean you have a point. You still got it wrong anyway because of the fact that Japan isn't religious. It doesn't have a religion whatsoever. A lot of people think they do, but they don't. And also, yes, Japan did get rather desperate towards the end of the war, at least for their part anyway, as they attempt to attack the American Navy with their aircrafts and whatnot, and trying to do these surprise attacks as if they felt like they could get the upper hand, which, yes, it would have, if they planned things better, but they made some colossal mistakes in the way of doing these attacks. If Japan did anything that Germany never did, is that Japan's military, the aircraft and whatnot, actually went to America's mainland, the east, I believe, if I remember correctly. And yeah, they actually posed a threat in some ways. So again, this has nothing to do with Christianity, like at all, whatsoever.
Constitution that was largely developed under the leadership of General Douglas MacArthur when he was effectively the viceroy of Japan. That constitution forbids Japan to enter into war. It renounces war and military involvement entirely.
Again, no. Christianity has nothing to do with that either. Any of this whatsoever. I mean, yes, Japan could get some help from America and doing the war. And the whole thing with the weapons, yes, Japan has weapons, but they can't exactly have too many of them. Just like what they had during the war and whatnot. So you're not getting your facts straight. You keep hammering the idea that it has some vague connection towards Christianity, but it really doesn't. Yeah, I said this already. This has nothing to do with religion. Japan and China and whatever country didn't have, political tensions, because Japan must hate religion. That's not the case whatsoever. This has nothing to do with that. I mean, yes, Japan wanted to have its own takeover over some areas in Asia, sure. But again, it's because of their own political ideals when you think about it. But again, it's not connected to Jesus. And yes, Japan did want to pretty much take over Asia, well, at the very least, as much as it could. And of course, Japan had some trouble when America came in and intervened some way, so which made things a bit more difficult, I guess you can say, sure. But yeah, boy, just make the pain go away. Make the pain go away.
Now, there have been some adjustments to that over the last half century and more.
Earlier, folks, yes, there's plenty of Christians in America, but just because America won, that doesn't mean it had something to do with Christianity.
For instance, Japan has centered in the fact that there has to be some level of self-defense.
Whatever changes this may be, still has nothing to do with Christianity, like, at all. Well, yes, there were changes in the military defense and whatnot, yeah. But you're still wrong. Japan was, of course, depleted of any military capability after being defeated by the Allies in World War II and was forced to sign this surrender agreement that was presented by the General MacArthur in 1945. It was occupied by the U.S. forces and only a minor police force on which to rely on for security and whatnot, and whatnot. I mean, yes, there were rising tensions in Europe and Asia due to the Cold War, yes, coupled with some sort of strikes and whatnot in Japan, and promoted some, some leaders to question certain things and whatnot when it comes to the military and whatnot. But of course, you're still getting a lot of it wrong. And yes, in recent years, Japan had been getting some threats from North Korea and whatever. But come on.
And thus, Japan now has self-defense forces. But Japan has largely lived under the nuclear umbrella and the defense protection of the United States of America and its allies in the Pacific. But with the Pacific world changing, and with the fallenness of this world becoming increasingly apparent with the rise of a militaristic China, Japan is having to rethink that constitutional understanding.
Are you really sure about any of that? It sounds like you're making a lot of bullshit up right there. A lot of stuff what you have been saying has been completely and utterly wrong.
The big debate right now in Japan is not whether or not it's going to have to be more aggressive in terms of its self-defense, now extending that self-defense not just to the island nation but to its allies. The big question there is not the whether but how, whether this will require a rewriting of the Constitution or merely a reinterpretation of the Constitution. But any way this ends up in Japan, it is ample evidence of the fact that we live in a more dangerous world than we might like to expect. A more dangerous world than the post...
Well, that's a complete lie. And actually, it's more safer now compared to the fact that, back then there's more advanced technology and whatnot. So you're just making it seem like more modern times are much worse compared to back then. Oh, whatever. This makes no sense.
Constitution of Japan contemplated, and yet the very actual world that Japan is now experiencing. Now keep that in mind when you consider yesterday's headline in the New York Times. U.S. charges Chinese Army personnel with cyberspying. As Michael Schmidt reports, the Department of Justice said yesterday it had charged 5 Chinese individuals in the People's Liberation Army in connection with stealing trade secrets from some of the largest American companies.
Ah, boy, I had a feeling that you were going to bring up the Communist Party of China. Of course you would. I mean, yes, they are doing lots of despicable stuff, what a bunch of communists would expect. But still, how is that evidence and what you're saying? But this is a really badly set up. I still don't know what this has to do with Godzilla, really, and King Kong and all that. But okay, proceed.
Including Westinghouse, United States Steel, and Alcoa. This is an indication that what had once been relegated to the field of espionage is now entering into average, ordinary, everyday military operations. According to the report, Schmidt writes, that report was released by the American security firm Mandiant, the attacks were coming from Chinese hacking group.
What the hell are you even talking about? All you're doing is trying to murk up the details as if you have a point, which you don't. All you're doing is trying to make things even scarier than they really are to make it seem that you have a legitimate argument here. You're lying. Lying, nothing but lying.
Known to many of their victims in the United States as Comment Crew or Shanghai Group. They were based in a People's Liberation Army building. But even as you think about what it means to live in a dangerous world in which American corporations are being hacked and their military secrets stolen by the Chinese People's Liberation Army.
Digital war. Oh yeah, that's just your weird way of wording everything to make it as if it's godless word. I mean, yes, those communists who don't like Christians, yeah. But that's not, okay, again, that's not evidence in what you're saying here, like at all. But okay, go on.
Consider the fact that right now there is a huge morality play being played out in Europe, where France is now prepared to sell 2 advanced ships to Russia, even as Russia is almost surely going to use those ships to threaten the very values that France says that it holds. As Michael Gordon of the New York Times reports, in a closed-door meeting in February of 2010, Defense Secretary Robert M. Gates, he was then the Secretary of Defense of the United States, urged his French counterpart not to proceed with the sale of 2 amphibious assault ships to Russia because, in the words of the U.S. Defense Secretary, quote, it would send the wrong message to Russia and to our allies in Central and Eastern Europe. The French official, known as Hervé Marine, acknowledged that each of the ships, the so-called Mistral-class vessels built for the French Navy to carry troops, landing craft, and helicopters, was, quote, indeed a warship for power projection. And that, according to information that was leaked and is now public knowledge, it was leaked as a part of the WikiLeaks project.
Funny how a lot of you Christians don't seem to mind if George W. Bush made some deals with foreign countries or not. You don't bat an eye. But if let's say Joe Biden did the exact same thing, suddenly you have an issue with it. Yeah, gee, I wonder what's going on here. And all of this, what he's saying, just comes off like exaggerated claims to make it seem like it's more scarier than what it is. Which, yes, is a form of manipulation, so nothing new there. If a Christian makes a deal with communists, you don't seem to bat an eye. But if someone else doesn't, now suddenly you have an issue with that. And also, again, he's trying to make it even like how way back when a certain period of time where people didn't believe in God. He's like the Roman Empire, for example. He's acting as if that part of history is repeating itself in the more modern time, which I have to say again is a damn lie.
But now we're 4 years after that warning from the American Defense Secretary to the French in 2010. Now we have undeniable evidence of the aggressiveness of Russia. Now we have the Russian forced annexation of the Crimean Peninsula. Now we have Russia destabilizing all of Ukraine and threatening Baltic states such as Latvia. And now we have undeniable evidence that Vladimir Putin has a vision of a greater Russia.
Well, to be technical here, yes, China is really being belligerent here, true. Extremely belligerent. But all you're doing is bait and twist and everything. Again, like I just said a moment ago, he's trying to make things a lot scarier than what they really are.
He is willing to use his military in a way that has not threatened Europe since the Second World War in order to effect that vision. And now we have France ready to sell the warships to allow Vladimir Putin to do just that. It was said that Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, back during the time of the Russian Revolution...
You don't know what the hell you're talking about. So Putin, that one of the Russian guys, buying out weapons from left and right, from all over the place, in order to use said weapons against the individuals he bought that from. What are you talking about? That doesn't even make any sense. He can actually make his own weapons if he wants to, but okay. Yeah, there's been a lot of political tension with communist China, with certain countries. Yeah, that does happen. It still continues to happen to this very day. It's not because it's godless. And in Japan, a lot of people have been saying that maybe they should allow them to have more weapons just in case if something were to occur. But again, he's really desperately trying to tie this entire thing with religion, Jesus Christ and all that, which again has nothing to do with that. Oh boy. There's been a lot of Christians who were using weapons too. And nothing to do with God. 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 And nothing to do with God. It's just the communists are just been extremely belligerent when you think about it.
In the early 20th century said that when the time comes to hang the capitalists will make bids to sell the rope.
Okay, then now that just sounds like something you really made up. But okay, go on.
It's uncertain as to whether or not Lenin actually said that, but if he didn't say it, it was attributed to him, and it makes sense. In other words, Vladimir Lenin was making the point that if your only concern is the profit...
So the capitalists are going to sell weapons to the communists, and all the communists will fight against the capitalists in this country? Okay, that goes against their intention. Why would capitalists even do that? Oh god, this okay, this makes no sense. None of this makes any sense, but okay. Well, that's pretty obvious from the start, but okay.
Then you will sell anything to anybody, regardless of the cost, regardless of the use. Christians know that even the profit motive has to be placed within a moral context.
See, that's what I'm talking about. He's trying to really loosely tie Christianity to this. He's fun at it. But I do have the right to sell whatever I want, whenever I want, to whomever I want, and whatever it might be, anytime I wish. I do have the right, and I also have the right to refuse to sell or buy something from someone. Oh boy, this is so dumb. And just because I can sell something to somebody doesn't mean I would actually will. Okay, case in point. Okay, let's say I have all these Disney Princess Dollies and Queen Dollies. I refuse to sell them to the Jehovah's Witnesses because I believe they're a bunch of morons. I have that right. So instead, I can sell to the LGBT community for the right price. It's not that hard to understand. Yeah, just because I have that right to sell something to somebody doesn't mean I will actually will. Dumbass. I mean, really.
Moral context in this case is a reminder that in a fallen world, selling aggressive warships to an aggressive party is a moral complex that is simply wrong. It's wrong on the face of it. It was wrong back in 2010, and it's even undeniably more wrong in the year 2014.
Oh boy, like I said, this guy just is rambling on and on, to make it as if it's so, like everything's scary all of a sudden and whatnot, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, like whatsoever, at all. And what does any of this have to do with this film? This movie's a bad movie, yes. It's easily one of the worst I've ever seen. But it still doesn't have anything to do with anything. And he's acting as if the only way you can be a good person if you're a Christian. It sounds like communism in itself when you think about it. That's a communist thing right there. Why do you have to be specifically Christian in order to be a good person? I thought God loved unconditionally. What the hell? I actually went to his thing right here, folks, and I had to, try to look for some material, study a little bit. I actually looked up here in the source bar with his name and Godzilla, and this video shows up. So, can we finally get the Godzilla stuff, really? I mean, really?
But the profit motive is a huge motive. Approximately 1,000 jobs in France are tied to these warships. It is a sale of approximately $1.6 billion. And Russia has told France if they get these 2 ships...
Oh boy. You're still not making any sense, Still not making any sense whatsoever. But okay, sure, go on, whatever.
And they're pleased with them. They are prepared to buy 2 more. There will be a total of at least $3.2 billion of business. And the question is, which nation would say no to that? What company would say no to that? But in a real world in which there are real dangers, saying yes to that means complicity with Russia's crimes against its own neighbors and its evil intentions, given its own territorial ambitions.
He's trying to sound spooky. He's trying to sound scary. It's the outside world that's cruel. It's cruel because they're anti-God. That seems like a really simplistic overweight to give your thoughts, but okay. What the hell? And yeah, that's the thing, folks. He's probably the type of guy to probably complain about this and say something that lines up. Oh, it's the Japanese invasion, meh. And something, yeah, some stupid lines of that. Even though they haven't done anything wrong, but okay, whatever, I guess. Anyway, boy.
Just when you thought it might not possibly get more complex in this fallen world, along comes an article in the Financial Times of London. It reports that when a U.S. National Reconnaissance Office satellite lifted off above Cape Canaveral on April the 10th of this year, the rocket's destination and its payload's purpose were kept top secret. But there is a strong possibility that the intelligent satellite will be used to monitor the Russian military, which, when the launch took place, was massed on Ukraine's eastern border. The Financial Times goes on to say, that was not the mission's only connection to Russia, however. The RD-180 engines that powered the Atlas V rocket were built not by one of the U.S.'s domestic aerospace companies, but by Russia's NPO Euromash maker.
Well, technically you're wrong again, considering the fact that they were actually willing to fix something on their own, not in the way that you're talking about. You couldn't be more wrong. Couldn't be more wrong, oh boy. Yeah, making the Russians seem like they're nothing more than a generic, typical James Bond villain. I mean, really? Oh boy. Go on.
Of one of the world's most advanced rocket motors. So in other words, in this fallen world of moral complexity, even as Japan is considering having to reinterpret or rewrite its constitution to defend itself, in a world in which the United States government charges China with cyber espionage against our own companies, the United States has launched a military satellite to watch the Russians. But in order to launch it, we had to use Russian motors on our rocket, the Atlas V rocket, to get this satellite into orbit.
Do you guys remember, well, whoever's listening anyway, if you remember the whole Trojan horse tactic that the Romans did? And yes, he's basically trying to claim that. That's happening nowadays, but like a more modern version. Yeah, apparently Russians, the communist Russians, are doing like a Russian, like their own version of the Trojan horse and whatnot, which doesn't make any sense because he has no evidence based on this kind of a thing, like whatsoever. Yeah, if anything, trying to use spooky language to scare a bunch of people. You think about it, that's all he's doing, which does seem like a manipulative tactic get people to his on his side, which of course a lot of Christians are known to be doing anyway. Oh boy, it's just wrong. Seems like he wants all this power for himself, really, when you think about it. So he's trying to say, the other side is scary, so come to my place. I will protect you. I'm the good guy here. The outsiders are evil. They're crazy. Not me, oh boy. It's bogus. Really. Uh, yeah, whatever, guys. It's so stupid. Real stupid.
The point of the Financial Times is this: if the United States wants to keep spying on Russia, it better develop its own rocket engines with which to launch the satellites to spy on the Russians. If it intends to ask the Russians to sell the rocket engines with which to launch the satellites, it better rethink the strategy. In a fallen world, there's moral complexity every direction we turn. There is danger every way we turn. And it's up to Christians to understand that that's not an abnormal situation. In a fallen world, that's what you call normal. And the Christian worldview says, when you face reality, deal with it. But speaking of living in a fallen world, our second major concern of the day is Godzilla.
Finally, we got to this point. It took a hot minute. But yeah, okay. I guess we're gonna get to the really juicy stuff of this. I guess so. This is dumb.
The movie. As a matter of fact, the first Godzilla movie came out in the 1950s. It was released in 1954, and most Americans have no idea that it was directed against us. It was
Well, this film is about anti-war. If anything, it's an anti-war message that blamed both sides of the argument, not just one side. Oh boy. And it's pretty much nature itself taking revenge on humanity for what it has done. Again, both countries have done some fucked up shit, and the director of this movie wanted to point that out. It's not anti-American, it's not anti-Japanese, it's anti-war. It's to make it as if that war is, is pretty much a hell war. And, um, and as a result, this creature came up and started destroying everything. Oh boy, I don't know how you can not know that. And, I mean, a lot of people were familiar with the bastard version that came out, sure, but yeah, of course it's the original version. There are two versions I believe popular, the American and Japanese version.
actually Japanese propaganda against the United States.
Wrong again. It's not anti-American. It's anti-war.
Godzilla, originally in the Japanese Gojira,
Okay, you got that right. But fuck you anyway, because you're a moron.
is the combination of the Japanese words for whale and lizard, and this is one whale of a lizard. Godzilla was supposed to be the direct result of the atomic attacks upon Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It was supposed to be the revenge.
Well, more like teaching humanity of what they have done. It kind of begs the question, who's the real monster here? I mean, yeah, Godzilla's destroying stuff, sure, but humans are the real reason that he's even here to begin with. Oh boy. I don't know how you missed all this. There's a lot more to this than you meets the eye. You're just skipping a lot of stuff. I don't know why, but okay.
Of an atomic monster, this horribly genetically deformed creature that came back to wreak vengeance and judgment against human beings who would be so bold as to use atomic power in order to create nuclear weapons.
Sir, can I be, well, maybe not the first person to tell you, but definitely somewhere in that list, that you're a fucking idiot.
The Japanese do have a right to defend themselves. And also, the Godzilla films that came on through 1954 all the way through 1975 were heavily re-edited. I highly doubt that you actually saw any of the Japanese versions, like at all. Oh boy.
Americans of my generation went to see the original Godzilla movies.
That's a fucking lie, like I just said. The vast majority of these films were heavily edited, were heavily censored because of the violence and swearing or any amount of nudity. Yes, these movies have nudity in it, but they're of course cut off. So, yeah, in other words, you're full of shit.
At their amateurish cinematography, and also completely oblivious to the fact that the Japanese were making a moral judgment about us.
Again, that's a lie. You're just making things up because you don't know what you're talking about, like, at all. Oh boy. funny that you would say that, trying to make a claim that they're making more judgment, and that's what you're doing. Do I have to remind you of the fact that the Bible was actually pretty okay with slavery? Yeah, of a certain group of people, Africans, African people. The Bible was okay with that, enslaving them. And another thing is that the film Martha vs. Godzilla had a moral message in a way because it was trying to show that we all can get along. Yes, a lot of nations had did terrible things in the past, sure, and every nation had done it. Unfortunately, yes, every single nation around the world has blood on their hands, sure, but it's up to us to make a difference. So, again, you're wrong.